America is a land of great museums, and every museum has spellbinding stories to tell.
The National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, home base.
Next on Great Museums.
This program is funded by the Yawkey Foundation, providing opportunities in education, healthcare, human services, amateur athletics, conservation, and the arts.
Major funding for Great Museums is provided by the Eureka Foundation, dedicated to the educational power of television and new media. Exercise your curiosity. Explore America's great museums.
It's a whole experience. When people come to Cooperstown, it's a form of a pilgrimage, and they love it.
You walk down that main street, and you've gone back in time. The surroundings create a state of mind that makes you appreciate that you're in a place where baseball history resides.
Nestled between the Adirondacks and the Catskills in upstate New York, the tiny village of Cooperstown has a mighty mission: to preserve and protect the story of America's game at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum.
This really is the spiritual home of the game, and we are the stewards of the game's history.
Baseball and America have grown up together.
People come to Cooperstown, come to the museum, and they find their past. They don't think they're going to find their past, but they do.
Its popularity endures because it is part of our nostalgia, our collective nostalgia.
That's the message we try to drive home. That's our main goal virtually every day, is to make sure that people understand that this is much more than just runs, hits, and errors. This is about American life.
So many people, and a broad range of people, love this game, pass it on from generation to generation.
Older people like it, kids follow it, people from all walks of life. It's a whole larger world that you tap into.
Every person has played baseball in some form or another as a kid. I think that that's why it's America's game, because everyone has played it.
Many of the objects on display at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum hit home with people right off the bat. The uniforms, the bats, the balls, the gloves, the baseball cards, things they have in their own lives.
In our collections, we have 35,000 artifacts, 2 million documents in our library, 500,000 historic photographs, and 12,000 hours of original TV and radio recordings. It's where people come to learn about the history of the game, but not just the game that's past, the game today.
My favorite part of the museum is our plaque gallery, because part of our mission is to honor excellence, and that is where we do it.
Baseball has been America's national pastime for nearly 150 years.
Even the world over, outside of our own country, baseball was known as the national game of America.
In 1860, the printers Currier and Ives used baseball lingo to explain the results of the presidential election. 3 candidates struck out. Abe Lincoln hit a home run.
I think it's the most powerful historical thing we have. It isn't about the game, it's about baseball and about America together and how they're linked.
Even as the Civil War raged, soldiers played baseball. A tireless promoter of the game was journalist Henry Chadwick. Some call him the father of baseball. He penned guidelines for the game and developed the modern box score.
It was a form of minor genius, what Chadwick came up with. You can get the essential story of a ball game in this little space in the newspaper, and you can absorb as much or as little of it as you want.
I think what interests me the most about the early days of baseball is that no matter how ingrained we think baseball is today, it was probably more ingrained then.
Fans then were as obsessed as fans now. They kept scrapbooks, sang and danced to baseball music, collected baseball figurines, played baseball board games, cheered like maniacs at baseball games.
If you were to somehow magically go back in time and watch a baseball game in, let's say, the 1860s, you would immediately go, well, that's a strange way to play baseball.
Underhanded pitching, no helmets, no gloves. The batter was out if the hit was caught on the fly or after one bounce.
Catchers in the early days of baseball had very little protection.
The first mask wasn't even patented until the 1870s.
You wondered how in the heck they could subject themselves to all those foul tips and collisions and balls in the dirt without the kind of protection that guys have today, where they're virtually in full body armor.
It's fun to watch how things have evolved. I mean, in the late 19th century, somebody developed a catcher's basket, which if you look at it, looks like a shopping cart strapped to the front of the catcher. The ball would just fall into this big basket, you know. I don't know what you do about throwing guys out at second base after you take the shopping cart off your chest.
This is the earliest photo of on-field competitors, the up-and-coming gentlemen of the Brooklyn Excelsiors and the New York Knickerbockers, America's first baseball club, established in the 1840s. The Knickerbockers were the first to adopt uniforms, straw hats, and blue flannel pants. In Wisconsin, the Baraboo Baseball Club dressed to the nines in caps and bib-front jerseys. Again, flannel was the fabric of choice.
Hot was hot back then, just like it's hot now. How do you play in August in flannel? It must have been brutal.
But play they did. The 1850s and 60s were the heydays of the amateur era. All across America, baseball clubs were social clubs, hosting games as well as formal evening balls.
So there's baseball clubs, and their best 9 players would play other teams, and that was called the first 9.
They played the entire game with only one baseball.
Whoever won the game would get to keep the baseball as victors, have it painted usually sort of a golden color, and write the particulars of the game on it.
This is the trophy case of the Eckford Baseball Club, Brooklyn's first baseball club, organized in 1855.
You'd also have a level of play called muffin play, the Muffin 9. Those were not the first string players. That wasn't the second string players or third or fourth. They were the worst 9 players in the club.
The Eckford trophy case contains over 150 balls from first 9, second 9, and even Muffin 9 victories.
Baseball clubs were not just embracing the top players. They were embracing everyone. Everyone gets to play.
This is the trophy ball from the first All-Star Series played in 1858.
And it was the best ball players from New York baseball clubs against the best ball players from Brooklyn baseball clubs. They charged 50 cents, which is actually a lot of money back then. It showed that people were willing to pay to watch baseball. From a standpoint of American capitalism, that's huge.
Baseball is exciting. A single, guy getting thrown out at home plate, guy hitting a triple, guy backing up, running into the wall, catching the ball, a pitcher striking out guys after guys. That's what baseball is all about.
By the 1870s, the business of baseball was in full swing. The first official play-for-pay team was the 1869 Cincinnati Red Stockings. In 1876, 8 clubs organized to form today's National League. The dominant team was the Chicago White Stockings, paced by their popular first baseman Cap Anson, who batted over 300 for 20 seasons.
One of the earliest celebrity endorsements we see in baseball is from the 1880s, and it shows Cap Anson and Buck Ewing, who are both Hall of Famers, kicking back and relaxing and drinking a nice beer.
Ohio-born Buck Ewing, the first catcher elected to the Hall of Fame, could throw out runners from a crouched position. Though he ended his 17-year playing career with his home state team, the Cincinnati Reds, In his heyday, he captained the New York Giants to their first 2 world championships in 1888 and 89. His famed defense is immortalized with this ball, which he fired to second baseman Danny Richardson to win the 1889 world title.
Danny Richardson put the tag on the player, and he kept that ball, and he handed it down to his family, and it was eventually donated to the Hall of Fame.
Mark Twain said baseball was the very symbol of the raging, tearing, booming 19th century. Sporting goods mogul A.G. Spalding agreed. Starting as a Boston Red Stocking, Spalding had gained national fame as the premier pitcher of the 1870s.
And at the peak of his career, he retired because he thought there would be money to be made in the sporting goods business.
He organized a world baseball tour to introduce America's national game and Spalding Sporting Goods to the far reaches of the planet.
He really wanted to show off baseball, this great American game that was near and dear to his heart because it really made him someone.
In the fall of 1888, Spalding took 20 of the best players and covered nearly 30,000 miles and 5 continents playing baseball. They were in Paris when the Eiffel Tower was being built. In Egypt, they staged a game in front of the Great Pyramids in the sand. They decorated the Egypt game ball and took pictures to document the day.
And right in the center of the picture, in a pith helmet, is A.G. Spalding with his mother next to him. Right, once again, at the center of the story.
Spalding also wanted an all-American explanation for the origin of baseball, so he formed a national commission to investigate its myths.
Here's the big one. Perhaps the best-known myth about baseball is that baseball was invented in Cooperstown in 1839.
By General Abner Doubleday, a celebrated Civil War hero, storied Indian fighter, and Cooperstown native. But in 1839, Doubleday was not even in Cooperstown. He was a cadet at West Point.
So not only did Abner Doubleday not invent baseball, he's not the guy who did not invent baseball.
That's what it's about. You can't have any lore if you don't have somebody who knows how to turn a story to his best advantage.
The World Series.
It's the fall classic, the fruition of what you started out to do in February. All the hard work that you put into spring training, all of the playoffs that you had to win.
For the Boston Red Sox, the 2004 World Series championship was the fruition of 86 years of hard work. The rivalry between baseball's 2 major leagues began in 1903 at the Huntington Avenue Baseball Grounds in Boston.
The American League had only been around for 2 years. They started in 1901. The National League had been around since 1876.
The game was such a big deal that a lot of people went, overflowed the stands. It was a mob scene. They had a lot of trouble clearing the field.
It shows how popular the game was. People all over the grounds of this great celebration of the first ever World Series.
For the Boston Americans, today's Red Sox, the first pitch was tossed by 36-year-old Cy Young. His devastating fastball would lead him to 511 career wins. Today, the Cy Young Award honors the best pitcher from each league. This is the last out ball from the first ever World Series, used to strike out the Pittsburgh Pirates giant Hannes Wagner, the Flying Dutchman.
One of the most highly prized collectibles, the holy grail of baseball collectibles, is the Honus Wagner T206 1909 tobacco card. One of the most valuable was recently auctioned for about $1.2 million. There are around 50 Wagner cards in existence.
At the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum is Hannes Wagner's locker, his cap, autographed ball, and Pirates jersey. Nearby, his first baseball contract and his bat.
When I walk through and see the baseball that they played with, the gloves that they used, it changes the way that I view the game.
You'll see that they had to be good fielders to catch the ball with those gloves.
Hannes Wagner's using a little mitten. Even if he got in front of the ball, it's a more difficult thing to scoop up with that mitten than it would be for Omar Vizquel or Ozzie Smith decades later.
In contrast to the barrel-chested, bow-legged Wagner was Christy Mathewson of the New York Giants, celebrated for his famous fade-away pitch.
Christy Mathewson was one of baseball's first matinee idols. He was said to be movie star handsome.
In the 1905 World Series, Mathewson pitched 3 complete game shutouts, leading the New York Giants to victory over the Philadelphia Athletics. The Giants' fiery manager John McGraw dismissed manager Connie Mack's Athletics as a white elephant. So Mack simply adopted the elephant as a mascot and then proceeded to trample the Giants in the 1911 and 1913 World Series. When President Taft tossed the first presidential pitch in 1910, he tossed it with confidence. It was the age of the automobile and the beginning of the consumer culture. America was on the rise, and so was baseball. Up went Philadelphia's Shibe Park, Tiger Stadium in Detroit, Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, Fenway Park in Boston, and Wrigley Field in Chicago. But soon World War I grabbed the headlines. In 1917, America joined the fight. Within a year, nearly 2 million American troops were over there. And so was baseball. At home, baseball strategy remained pretty much the same. Hit-and-run plays, bunts, sacrifices, stolen bases, and pitching.
Prior to Ruth, the home run was just not that big a part of baseball strategy. Frank Home Run Baker never hit more than 12 in a season. He hit 2 in a World Series and got the nickname. Ty Cobb led the league one year with 9.
Ty Cobb of the Detroit Tigers may have been baseball's fiercest competitor. He would practice sliding until his legs were raw, but it paid off. He stole nearly 900 bases and scored over 2,200 runs. Some say Cobb was the greatest baseball player of all time, but he was not universally beloved. In 1918, as the Red Sox began their quest for an unprecedented 5th World Series title, their ace pitcher, the young Babe Ruth, proved himself to be the greatest slugger the game had ever known, leading the Sox to victory. Then, the Sox sold him to the Yankees.
He was the Sultan of SWAT. He virtually invented the home run.
After the 1919 Black Sox scandal, baseball was in a real bad rut. And Babe Ruth came along, and he captured the hearts of everybody in America. They loved the Babe.
Not only did Ruth hit 714 home runs, he had seasons where he hit more home runs individually than other entire teams. When he retired, he had more than 200 lifetime home runs than the next highest guy on the list, and that was the whole history of the home run to that point.
Unbelievable, especially considering the bat that he was using.
It's like a giant bludgeon. It's like Paul Bunyan went into the woods and felled a tree and took the biggest branch and just filed it down and went up to the plate with it.
His marketing value was sky high, and he endorsed, of course, sports equipment, but he also endorsed other pieces, such as his own brand of underwear.
His swashbuckling and garrulous personality perfectly captured the 1920s, the so-called golden age of sport. His legend not only will never be exceeded, it'll never be approached.
The house that Ruth built still stands. Yankee Stadium opened in 1923. That year, a new face, Lou Gehrig, joined Ruth to form the most devastating hitting duo ever.
Lou Gehrig was such a great performer.
Gehrig had played a record 2,130 games. When just shy of 38, he was felled by a rare disease that would later carry his name.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
The Lou Gehrig locker with his 1939 jersey, and when you think about that being his locker and this great career just coming to a quick end way too prematurely, that's one that usually gets me when I walk by.
That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
He was the Iron Man, the great, great, great Lou Gehrig. What a man. He was my hero.
ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be present at the dedication of the National Baseball Museum and the Baseball Hall of Fame. I should like to dedicate this museum to all America, to lovers of good sportsmanship, healthy body, keen mind, for those are the principles of baseball.
A baseball museum and Hall of Fame was the brainstorm of Cooperstown native Stephen Clark, businessman and philanthropist.
Well, my grandfather was not only a philanthropist and an art collector, but he was a visionary. He also believed deeply in institution building and making institutions relevant to the community.
In 1939, crowds gathered in Cooperstown for the induction of baseball's first Hall of Famers. Ty Cobb, Christy Mathewson, Walter Johnson.
Thank you, Walter Johnson.
Hannes Wagner, the Flying Dutchman. The next is Cy Young.
Glad that I was able to go through 22-odd years and do what I did.
Babe Ruth, the Bambino.
And as my old friend Cy Young says, I hope it goes another 100 years, and the next 100 years will be the greatest.
The next year, a new tradition was added, the annual Hall of Fame game at Doubleday Field. Stepping up to the plate for the Boston Red Sox, young Ted Williams hit 2 home runs, but the Sox lost 10-9 to the Chicago Cubs.
When I watched him play, it looked like some great artist performing. He could hit that ball so hard and so far. He was the greatest hitter that I have ever seen.
To Williams, batting was a science. This box of balls corresponds to the strike zone, a rectangular space from chest to knees. Williams himself assigned a number to each ball, representing what his batting average would be if the pitch passed through that area of his strike zone.
As a hitter, which was his obsession, no contemporary was as good, that's for sure.
1941 was an exciting year for baseball fans. Ted Williams was nearly unstoppable, achieving an impressive .406 batting average for the season. And Joltin' Joe DiMaggio of the Yankees had a 56-game hitting streak. In December of that year, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Williams and DiMaggio went to war.
When the Second War began, people wanted the game of baseball to be stopped, but the president says no. President Roosevelt said we need baseball.
Over 500 ball players went to war from the majors over that 4-year period.
The war years gave the farm team experiment, begun by the Cardinals, the opportunity to prove itself. The idea was to buy minor league teams, sign raw, unproven ball players, and develop them. The strategy paid off big. In the '42 World Series, the Cardinals, led by Stan the Man Musial, blew past the Yankees in 5 games.
You ask a 60-year-old guy in St. Louis, Stan the Man is the man for him and always will be.
The Cardinals went on to win the 1944 and 1946 World Series, where they faced Ted Williams and his Red Sox. But the Cardinals clinched the crown when Enos Slaughter made his famous mad dash from first base to home.
Slaughter is off and running with a pitch. Walker lines to hit to left center. Slaughter comes.
It was Slaughter's second World Series appearance, and Williams' last. But no one respected hard-nosed hustling more than Williams.
Because ball players are not born great. They're not born hitters or pitchers or managers, and luck isn't the key factor. No one has come up for a substitute for hard work.
In his 1966 Hall of Fame induction speech, Williams, now a veteran of 2 wars and an official baseball immortal, challenged baseball's racist history.
And I hope that someday the names of Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson in some way can be added as a symbol of the great Negro players that are not here only because they were not given a chance.
I've never felt because African Americans were kept out of it, it wasn't America's game. I think of America as all of us together. African American players were playing. They were playing in the Negro Leagues. They were playing baseball in the Negro Leagues.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be on the team with Jackie Robinson. And you know, he was a hero. He was an American hero. Not just what he did for the black players, but what he did for the game of baseball and what he did for this country.
In 1947, Jackie Robinson changed America. Robinson had played for the all-black Kansas City Monarchs. His teammate was the great pitcher Satchel Paige.
Satchel Paige was an unbelievable player, and it wasn't just the fact that he was a player, but his charisma and his showmanship.
Branch Rickey, the president and general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, had actively and secretly scouted the Negro Leagues looking for great talent.
Rickey knew that if he picked the wrong player, the experiment would be doomed to failure.
He chose a UCLA four-letter athlete and former Army lieutenant, Jackie Robinson.
He got everything from physical abuse to racial epithets from both opposing players and fans, thrown at by pitchers, beamed in the head, spiked on the base paths.
Robinson silenced his critics, winning the Rookie of the Year award in '47 and the National League's Most Valuable Player award in '49.
When he put that uniform and those spikes on, he was tough. He wanted to beat you. He was one of the finest competitors I've ever seen in all my years in baseball.
The color barrier in baseball was a definite policy. No blacks had played in the majors since the single-season appearance of Fleet Walker and his brother Weldy in 1884.
It's interesting that while racism and segregation are an obviously negative part of baseball's history, the Negro Leagues are a romantic part of baseball history.
The first professional all-black team was the Cuban Giants of Babylon, New York, founded in 1885.
Prior to 1920, the best black teams were barnstorming teams, and they travel the country playing all comers. They play other black barnstorming teams. They play teams composed entirely of white players. They play amateur teams, semi-pro teams, minor league teams. They were playing ball the only way they could, which would be to travel around and play those people who would play them for money.
But in 1920, black ball got organized when Rube Foster of the Chicago American Giants created the Negro National League. As a player-manager, Foster developed what became known as the Negro League style.
Aggressive base running, hit and run, creative use of sacrifice plays, be patient at the plate so you can run pitchers deep into the count, better chance to get a walk, get a man on base, get a guy on base, get him over. So it was a risky, aggressive style of play.
In 1924, the first Negro World Series was held. The Kansas City Monarchs, stars of the Negro National League, defeated the Hilldale Daisies, champions of the rival Eastern Colored League. Members of the victorious Kansas City Monarchs signed this ball.
One black historian had said to me, how can people refer to the 20s and 30s, the heyday of Ruth, as the golden era, when maybe 1/3 of the best players around may not have been playing?
Not playing white Major League ball, that is. The 20s and 30s were also the heyday of black baseball, with superstars like Mississippi-born Cool Papa Bell of the St. Louis Stars, known for his speed.
Basically, the legend is that Cool Papa Bell could shut off a light, and he was so fast he could get into bed before the room went dark. The neat thing about it is it was true.
In the 1940s, the Homestead Grays ruled black baseball under the leadership of Cumberland Posey.
Cumberland Posey just dedicated his life to the running of the Homestead Grays.
The Grays' star attraction was their power-hitting tandem Buck Leonard and Josh Gibson, who was dubbed the Black Babe Ruth.
Josh Gibson was a man of unbelievable, prodigious home run talent, and could just absolutely crush the baseball.
Clearly, if he had played in the major leagues, and if people had had the chance to see Josh Gibson, he would be known as one of the greatest players who ever played the game.
Barely 35 years old, Josh Gibson suffered a stroke and died just a few months before Jackie Robinson entered the major leagues.
Larry Doby, just 6 weeks later than Jackie Robinson, integrated the American League, and that was a great moment for not only Larry, but for all of baseball and for America.
In 1948, Satchel Paige joined Doby on the Cleveland Indians. At age 42, Page was the oldest rookie to ever play in the major leagues. Without its greatest stars, the Negro Leagues faded away. By 1959, every major league team had been integrated. It had taken 13 years.
During that 13-season period, there were 9 most valuable players, 9 rookies of the year, 4 batting champions, 5 home run champions, and the first Cy Young award winner, all black ball players.
Satchel Paige became the first Negro League star to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971. He was joined by a host of Negro League pioneers, representing a long tradition of black baseball that began even before the Civil War. The integration years also opened up Major League Baseball to dark-skinned Latinos. From the Dominican Republic, Juan Marichal, pride of the San Francisco Giants, was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1983, and Puerto Rican Orlando Cepeda in 1999.
When Orlando was elected, and he and I took a tour of the museum together, and he goes, "Negro Leagues, this is where my dad would have played." Those words went out of his mouth 30 seconds when he looked up in the corner at a team picture from the Dominican Republic and said, "Oh my God, there's my dad." It was.
Also from Puerto Rico, Hall of Famer Roberto Clemente of the Pittsburgh Pirates recorded hit number 3,000 in his last at-bat of the 1972 season. That same year, while trying to ensure that relief supplies made it through black marketeers to earthquake victims in Nicaragua, Clemente's plane went down.
And basically, what Roberto said was, "They will not steal from me." And he was going to put himself between the goods and the criminals. So that's the reason he was on that plane.
Venezuelan shortstop Cesar Gutierrez of the Detroit Tigers did not make the Hall of Fame, but he did make history in 1970.
One day, Gutierrez, who was about a 200 lifetime hitter, went 7 for 7 in a game.
That's 7 hits in 7 at-bats without an out.
So we have Cesar Gutierrez's bat in the museum. It's not just the Hall of Famers, it's not just their records, but it is the everyday player who catches lightning in a bottle one day, and he's immortalized forevermore in the record books, but also in the Baseball Hall of Fame here in Cooperstown.
9th inning of the decisive game of the playoff series, trailing 4-1. But still, the fighting spirit of the Giants recognizes no odds.
October 3rd, 1951, the Polo Grounds, the National League pennant race.
It's not just any pennant race. It's the Giants and the Dodgers. The Giants have come from 13.5 games back to catch the Dodgers. Now they come up down 4-1 going to the bottom of the ninth. Whoever finished first, they went to the World Series.
Bobby Thompson of the Giants at bat.
Bobby Thompson was a good ball player. He's not a Hall of Fame ball player, and nobody would know him. But in 1951, God said, "Bobby, this is your day."
Not only does Thompson hit the home run, but Russ Hodges delivers this incredible, passionate, unforgettable, spine-tingling to this day call.
With 3 great Major League home teams, the Giants, the Yankees, and the Brooklyn Dodgers, baseball fever consumed New Yorkers in the 1950s.
Fans arguing about it on the subways, at the newsstands, and the soda fountains, the newspaper columns, year in and year out.
People say to me, who's the best baseball player you ever saw? All-around baseball player. And I don't even hesitate. I say there's 2 guys, Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle. Those 2 guys were exciting.
New York Giant Willie Mays was Rookie of the Year in 1951. In '52, Mantle hit the first 2 of his record-setting 18 World Series homers. In '54, a stunning defensive play by Mays, simply known as the catch, propelled the Giants to the World Championship against the Cleveland Indians.
He turns and makes a miraculous catch with his back to the plate.
Willie Mays was talking to the clubhouse boy, and the clubhouse boy told him that he didn't have a glove for Little League. So Willie threw him his glove and said, "Here, take this." And so this little boy went out and played Little League with Willie Mays' glove that he made one of the most famous catches in history with.
And today, that glove is in Cooperstown. In 1955, for the 5th time in 9 years, the Dodgers and the Yankees went head-to-head in the World Series. This time, the Bums from Brooklyn beat the Bronx Bombers, and the Dodgers fans went wild. In '56, they were at it again. In Game 5, Yankees pitcher Don Larson went down in history as the first man ever to pitch a perfect game in the World Series. The following year, fans of both the Giants and the Dodgers would suffer a more serious blow than losing to the Yankees. The Giants announced their move to San Francisco, and the Dodgers went to LA, leaving behind their fans and their beloved Ebbets Field. Ebbets Field was torn down to make room for apartments, ripping the hearts out of the Dodger fans in Brooklyn.
In no other sport does where the game is played count as much as baseball. And there's a great deal of angst when an old ballpark goes down.
An Ebbets Field home plate and the 1912 cornerstone were salvaged and brought to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Only 2 years after the move west, the LA Dodgers won the 1959 World Series. By 1962, they had a brand new stadium home.
I call it blue heaven on earth. Some of the greatest players that ever played the game of baseball have performed out on that field.
Sandy Koufax started in Brooklyn, made the move to LA, and led the Dodgers to 4 World Series and 3 championships. He set a new standard with 382 strikeouts in 1965. Back on the East Coast, the New York Yankees were up against the scrappy Pittsburgh Pirates in the 1960 World Series. Instant hero Bill Mazeroski became the first player ever to end the World Series with a home run. The 1961 Yankees are considered one of the greatest teams in history, with larger-than-life slugger Mickey Mantle and his quiet teammate Roger Maris. In the last game of the season, Roger Maris hit his 61st home run, surpassing Babe Ruth as the single-season home run leader.
If you only think of Roger Maris in terms of 61 home runs, you miss a large part of the story. He won back-to-back MVP awards in 60 and 61. He was a perennial all-star in the American League. He played on 7 pennant-winning teams in the 60s. Could you write a history of baseball and not give a significant chapter to Roger Maris? The answer to that is no.
As the 70s dawned, President Nixon tossed the final presidential pitch of the decade. A new chapter began.
He's sitting on 7-14. Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7-15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
Hank Aaron's one of the most admirable people in the history of American sports, let alone baseball. A great, great player.
Most home runs in history. Most RBIs in history by 300. Third in all-time hits behind Rose and Cobb. Throw out all of his home runs, he's still got 3,000 hits.
He was class personified. All he did was put that uniform on and gave it 100% day in and day out. He's not only a Hall of Famer in baseball, he's a Hall of Famer in class.
The Hall of Fame induction ceremony is a moment the last weekend of July. My first week on the job was Nolan Ryan, George Brett, Robin Yount, and Orlando Cepeda. And through that receiving line is coming every hero of my childhood. Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, Al Kaline, Harmon Killebrew, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, Stan Musial, Willie Mays. I'm about as lucky a guy as anybody I know.
More than 200 of baseball's immortals are enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
And that is less than 1% of all men who have ever put on a uniform and played Major League Baseball. And to stand in that plaque gallery and see the plaques of those men, to me, is magical.
I walked in that room, and it's mind-boggling to me to know that the spirit of all the greatest players who ever lived was in that room at one time. And I stood there for a long period of time just by myself. It was just magnificent, because it just seemed like I was there with all these guys. You know, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, all those guys are the greatest players.
And they're not arranged alphabetically, so you got to look a little bit for your favorite player. You get a little surge of excitement when you finally discover his plaque on the wall.
Johnny Bench, who was a teammate of mine. Willie Stargell from my hometown. He was from Oakland, and we were friends. Nellie Fox, because as a kid growing up, Nellie Fox and Jackie Robinson were my idols.
In 1972, Morgan joined the Big Red Machine with Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Pete Rose, and his double-play partner, shortstop, Dave Concepcion. The Cincinnati Reds dominated the 70s with 4 World Series appearances and 2 wins. In Game 6 of the '75 World Series, Red Sox Carlton Fisk blasted a winning home run. The Sox were now tied with Cincinnati going into the final game.
I wasn't big, strong, powerful. I had to learn the nuances of the game. I had to do little things to make me a better player, to make me important to my team.
With 2 outs in the top of the 9th, Joe Morgan stepped to the plate and broke the hearts of the Sox fans. The death blow, a simple single, sent teammate Ken Griffey home to score the winning run for the Cincinnati Reds.
I would have played baseball forever if I could, but you can't.
He had power. He had the greatest self-confidence when he walked up to the plate, and that's why he became a Hall of Famer.
Joe Morgan was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1990.
Basically, I said, the only thing that could make this a better day is if Jackie Robinson was sitting there and Nellie Fox. I said, other than that, this is a perfect day. Again, those 2 guys had a big effect on the fact that I was even standing there that particular day.
They all feel that way, that how did I get here and find myself with a plaque on the wall next to Ted Williams and Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and all the great players of history.
I think I'm always going to have problems trying to say Mays, Musial, and Morgan in the same breath.
The Hall of Fame isn't just to celebrate baseball history, it's to depict and present baseball history. And the Black Sox scandal is part of that. Segregation, regrettably, is part of that. Pete Rose is part of that. And the steroid era is part of that.
Baseball changes with our society in a way. The people who play the game change, but not the game itself.
Fans were frustrated and loyalty strained when a players' strike in 1994 resulted in the cancellation of the World Series for the first time in 90 years. Baseball was in a slump. Then Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa got into a home run derby.
I could remember walking around and a young kid would say to me, hey, did McGwire hit one today? Another kid would say, hey, did Sosa hit one? They brought a lot of people back to baseball. You can have the greatest ballpark in the world and the greatest team in the world, and if nobody goes through those turnstiles, you got to close the gate.
We really want people to come and learn that women have been a part of the game really since the beginning and continue to be a part of the game today.
In the 1990s, 1,300 women tried out for the Colorado Silver Bullets, the first all-female professional baseball team in 40 years. 24 were chosen. In 1994, they hit the field.
They were managed by Hall of Famer Phil Necro, and each year got better and better and better.
They went out and played against men. They played the game extremely well.
3 years later, the Silver Bullets folded, but the Diamond Dreams did not.
But I still have my dream, and that's to play professional baseball.
22-year-old Isla Borders became the first woman to pitch for a men's minor league team in 1997.
Isla Borders played college ball out in California. Her dream was to be a Major League Baseball player.
Women have always been a part of the game because women insisted on being a part of the game.
After the Civil War, women couldn't vote, but they could play ball. In up to 30 pounds of long sleeves, high-necked blouses, layered skirts, and high-button shoes. The first girls of summer who were paid to play took the field in the 1870s. Organized by men, they entertained the crowds with bad baseball.
Later on, the women began barnstorming across the United States, playing other women's teams, but also sometimes playing men's teams. That was in the 1880s and 90s.
Into the 20th century, women's barnstorming teams called Bloomer Girls offered jobs, travel, and adventure for young women who could hit, field, slide, or catch. Beginning in 1907, 17-year-old Alta Weiss pitched her way through medical school using intelligence and a hard fastball. A star pitcher on a men's team in Ohio, she was one of the biggest box office draws in the Midwest. In 1922, Edith Houghton was only 10 years old when she became the shortstop for the Philadelphia Bobbies. The team's name referred to their bobbed hair. The kid was so small that she had to punch new holes in her belt and tighten her cap with a safety pin. During World War II, women's baseball reached a high point. Nearly 600 women played professional baseball in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League.
Phil Wrigley of the Chicago Cubs and Wrigley Chewing Gum fame recognized that World War II might put a real crimp in men's baseball and thought that perhaps a market might be around for women to play the game. And so he started up the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League.
In 1948, almost 1 million fans paid to watch the All-American Girls, who were positioned by their promoters as both athletic and ladylike. The Lingerie Company, Maidenform, had a similar idea, pitching bras and baseball to the new women of the 50s.
It's part of that, I dreamed I did whatever in my Maidenform bra, and this is, I dreamed I pitched the World Series in my Maidenform bra.
The National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum opened its first Women in Baseball exhibit, exploring the female side of the game in November of 1988. The exhibit influenced a movie, A League of Their Own, directed by Penny Marshall with an all-star cast, including Gina Davis, Madonna, and Tom Hanks.
It actually contributed something to the vocabulary of the game. Tom Hanks' line about crying. Are you crying? There's no crying in baseball.
That movie in 1992 really opened the floodgates for a great deal of research about the story of women in baseball.
The statue that we unveiled on Mother's Day of one of the players in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League honors all women in baseball.
Even the youngest women, like the Pawtucket, Rhode Island Slaterettes, the longest-running girls' league in the country. And 12-year-old Maria Pepe of Hoboken, New Jersey, who made the boys' team in 1972, but was forced off by the National Little League No Girls Allowed rule. Her court case opened Little League to girls.
Katie Brownell pitched what we have termed the perfect game.
The only girl in her entire Little League in Western New York, Katie Brownell, made baseball history in 2005.
She struck out every single batter that she faced, and she never even went to a 3-ball count on any of them.
And when I see youngsters playing, Little Leagues, Pony Leagues, American Legion, I stop and watch them play. I love to watch a baseball game. I try to tell them, follow the rules of the game, then you're going to be following the rules of life.
There are too few places in America that bring the generations together, and we're one of those places, and that makes us very proud.
There were 3 visitors in the museum, grandfather, father, and a son. The son said, Jeter's the best player ever. Father said, it's Mickey Mantle. It's Mickey Mantle. He was the best Yankee. And his father told them they were both wrong. Joe DiMaggio was the best player ever in baseball and was never going to be rivaled. They're going to have this argument for years to come now. And it's small, it's very personal, but that's the way we do it.
One night after hours, this snapshot was found not in, but under an exhibit case.
And when I turned it over, there was a note in the back, and it said, "You were never too tired to play catch. On your days off, you helped build the Little League field. You always came to watch me play. You were a Hall of Fame dad. I wish I could share this moment with you, your son, Pat." I was a mess. Obviously, some grown son had inducted his dead father into the Hall of Fame.
The dinosaur logo on the uniform sleeve helped curators identify Joe O'Donnell, who played for the Sinclair Oil team in nearby Wellsville in the 1940s. He died of a heart attack when son Pat was 18.
What Pat had said to me, you know, it was 20 years after he had died, and I still missed him.
The Field of Dreams is a place that every child who grew up with baseball knows well.
When I was about 14 years old, 15 years old, I used to go to bed at night and I used to actually dream that I was playing for the New York Yankees.
Well, I simultaneously wanted to be Mickey Mantle and Mel Allen.
Growing up in Detroit, it was 5 or 6 times a year when my dad would pile us in the station wagon and take us down to Tiger Stadium to see the Tigers play.
And to enjoy simply being at the ballpark.
Everyone knows "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." It's the 3rd most popular song in the United States. I think about singing it as a little kid as one of the first songs I learned.
Inspired by an ad in the New York subway for a game at the Polo Grounds, Jack Norworth wrote the words in 1908. He had never even attended a baseball game.
Well, I hear that tune and I sing along with it. I'm thankful that I'm part of that song. Take me out to the ball game. That's where I want to go.
You know, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. And, you know, I still enjoy the words. I don't so much enjoy the beat, but I enjoy the words. I enjoy the words and what it's supposed to mean.
The idea of escape, the idea of having a childlike feeling, no matter what your age is, the idea of forgetting your troubles. I don't care if I ever get back.
You listen to the ball hitting the bat. You hear the fans cheering. That's what it's all about.
I can remember the cigar smoke. I can remember the peanut smell, the beer smell.
The hot dogs.
Over 40 million hot dogs are served in ballparks each season. And a lot of times, that's the only time they have a hot dog. I know that's true for me. It's part of the ritual. Bobbleheads, they're just fun. They're funny looking, they spring up and down. There's something kind of happy about them.
Fans have collected baseball cards for more than 100 years and memorized millions of baseball statistics.
A baseball fan, even a casual baseball fan, is aware of dozens of historical milestones.
Well, statistics are really the language of the game in many ways. It's the way we measure players against one another, even players of different eras against one another.
It's never an apples-to-apples comparison, but it's perfectly plausible to speculate whether Randy Johnson was better than Walter Johnson, or whether Ken Griffey Jr. was as good as Joe DiMaggio. And what would it be like if Babe Ruth came up to bat against Roger Clemens?
That's what the fans should do. Come to the game and enjoy themselves.
And year in, year out, fans and friends come to Cooperstown.
We hope that they leave having a deeper sense of the history of the game, of its sparkling moments, of its tough times.
When they come here, they shouldn't be just looking for the usual suspects. Look for people who maybe had a good year or a good day, turned out to be a good citizen in relation to the game.
Well, baseball really is a common thread of our American experience. It's a little bit more important than just a game.
In baseball, dreams can come true. Hard work pays off, and everybody gets to play.
And then there I was standing at the podium in Cooperstown, being inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame. And you know what? I felt like my mother was going to start shaking me and saying, "Wake up, Tommy. It's time to go to school.
Learn more about America's great museums at greatmuseums.org.
The Great Museums collection is available on DVD. Call 1-800-230-4453 or visit greatmuseums.org.
Museums hold the treasures and tell the tales of the people and places that make America great.
This program is funded by the Yawkey Foundation, providing opportunities in education, healthcare, human services, amateur athletics, conservation, and the arts.
Major funding for great museums is provided by the Eureka Foundation, dedicated to the educational power of television and new media. Exercise your curiosity. Explore America's great museums.